Hello, Easton, and welcome to the Rabbi's Roundtable, our first taping in 2021. I hope everybody had a wonderful holiday season, and it turns out to be a happy and healthy new year for all of us. I certainly know that the clergy colleagues and myself that we have been praying for this, and we're doing our best from this side, I'll tell you that. It's amazing. Nick, our producer, Nick Richards, reminded me that this is the beginning of our 14th season of doing the Rabbi's Roundtable. It's hard to believe. We'll talk about that another time as well. But I'm glad to be back. I'm glad it's a new year, and I hope, as I said, that it will be a good and healthy and successful new year for all of us, filled with joy and blessings. Let me get to our first guest because I'm excited about this. Our first guest is a PhD, Dr. John H. Miller. He has taught literature courses at both secondary and college levels, including American literature at the University of Clermont-Ferrand, France, under a Fulbright Fellowship. Very cool, John. I didn't know that. He has also taught at the University of Pittsburgh, Carnegie Mellon University, Washington College, American University, and the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum's Academy for Lifelong Learning, which we will talk a little bit about as well. And I have to read this because it strikes a chord within me. Those of you who know me know that I love to sail. Given his interest in things maritime, John taught a course on literature of the sea as visiting lecturer and member of the University of Virginia's faculty on 2 separate round-the-world voyages with the UVA's Semester at Sea program. I am so jealous. You'll have to tell us a little more about that. John and the late John Ford, our dear friend who we miss dearly, co-taught some 50 literature courses over the past 20 years. John is also involved in several local nonprofits, currently serving as president of Allegro Academy and board member of Chesapeake Forum. John earned his PhD from the University of Pittsburgh with a Bachelor's of Art from Yale. You couldn't get into a good school? That's really too bad. It is my pleasure to introduce my dear friend, John Miller, and we are going to have to talk about what Chesapeake Forum is planning and what we have coming up. So welcome to the Rabbi's Roundtable, John, for 220.
Thank you, Peter. It's good to see you again, be with you.
Likewise. So the Semester at Sea program must have been incredible.
Well, that's the right word for it. I was very, very lucky. I had applied for a number of years, never heard one way or another, and I thought, well, I guess I just don't qualify. But I had to make a change in my resume, and I called the Semester at Sea office in Charlottesville, and they said, why don't you just write a letter to the dean? So I did, and she called me within 24 hours, and I was in Charlottesville the next day with an interview and was hired. So it was a great experience.
Wow. I know kids, I know students that have done that experience. It's worth every second and every penny. It's incredible what this does. So
it's really true. I mean, it's you are in close proximity to your students day after day.
Oh, sure.
And you really get to know not only your students pretty well, and not just from an academic point of view, but also you need to be available for counseling, because for some students, it's the first time they've ever been away from home.
Yep.
And it was, I would say it ranks very high up on my most favorite teaching experiences ever.
Very cool. Very cool. So let's talk a little bit about what's planned for this year in the Chesapeake Forum and what we have coming up. I know that talking about Yale, Professor David Blight is going to be coming in. So let's talk a little bit about that and what he's going to do and how he's going to do it. I'm excited. He's
Good.
the best.
Pleased to inform you. And And David Blight is a person who's not is a frequent visitor to the Eastern Shore
Yes.
of Maryland,
Yes.
as you know.
Yep.
He came down here frequently to do research on his Pulitzer Prize winning book, which is called Frederick Douglass, Prophet of Freedom.
Yep.
And so he knows a number of people down here on the Eastern Shore. And when Chesapeake Forum decided to have a special lecturer, which we have done once before in our relatively short history, we had Commander B.J. Murphy from the United States Naval Academy gave a distinguished lecture talk last year at the Prager Family Auditorium. And this year, the Board of Trustees of the Board of Governors of Chesapeake Forum decided that in view of John Ford's early death last year, that it would be appropriate to dedicate David Blight's lecture in memory of John Ford, who was the founding president of Chesapeake Forum.
I know.
John Ford and I got to know, because we're often called the two Johns. John Ford and I got to know David Blight early on when he was down here for the unveiling of the statue of Frederick Douglass in the courthouse lawn.
Right.
And
that's when I met him as well.
You met him there too. Exactly.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
It was one of those extraordinary experiences in Easton's history to have a distinguished scholar like that there, but it's a distinguished scholar who really, I like to think of him as a person who doesn't let his scholarship get in the way of his being a very approachable and delightful person to talk
absolutely to. I would agree with that. He didn't know me from Adam, and I introduced myself, and we spent 10 minutes talking about New Haven and all sorts of stuff.
Exactly.
So.
Well, John and I both were there for that event, and I didn't know anything about David Blight before, and very little about Frederick Douglass. And when David Blight gave his keynote address and talked with such passion about the words of Douglass himself, I'd say David Blight brings Douglass to life. He referred to those marvelous lines, and I have them here if I can find them, when Frederick Douglass writes in his first autobiography about standing as a black man looking out over Eastern Bay towards the Western Shore, and he sees all these white sails sailing off into freedom, and they're beautiful. And he describes himself as, here I am, a black man chained to this place, and there are those beautiful vessels of freedom sailing away to the west. And he wrote the following: "You are loosed from your moorings and are free, and I am in my chains and am a slave. You move merrily before the gentle gale, and I sadly before the bloody whip. You are freedom's swift winged angels that fly around the world. I am confined in bonds of iron. Oh, that I were free. Oh, that I were on one of your gallant decks and under your protecting wing. Alas, betwixt me and you, the turbid waters roll." I was moved by that, as I think everybody is.
Yep, without question.
And so afterwards, both John and I decided we needed to learn more about David Blight. We needed to learn more about Frederick Douglass. I'm from Pittsburgh, and I never heard of Frederick Douglass, I'm ashamed to say. And we ended up becoming sort of a Frederick Douglass, or I should say David Blight groupies. Whenever he gave a talk, we would go attend it. And then we decided after a while that we needed to offer a course about Frederick Douglass as a writer. So John Ford and I put together a lecture which we gave at the Easton Library. And he's a marvelous writer, Douglass is, and extraordinary orator.
His oratory skills were fabulous. If I had the power to do this, I would make every high school kid read a lot from Frederick. First, the use of his language, the way he expresses himself. I wish I had that ability. He was remarkable, given the realities of the time in which he lived and what he was able to accomplish. It speaks volumes about the kind of person he was and his legacy.
You're absolutely right. And
It's
David
amazing.
Blight David Blight
I'm glad we're doing this.
Yeah, David will be talking about Frederick Douglass on the 21st of January.
Yep. And we will put this on the screen.
4 p.m. to 5:30 p.m. And the topic is going to be Frederick Douglass in his times and in ours. So this is I think, an extraordinary experience. And we are at the Chesapeake Forum are really proud we can present him with a virtual lecture.
It's wonderful. Where will this take place? Where will the lecture be held?
Well, the lecture will be held via Zoom, just like we're doing.
Oh, right.
It would be wonderful if he would be here himself, and I'm sure in the future, when this pandemic goes away, he will.
You know, I realized that was a dumb question because, and I just can't get used to the fact. I mean, I wear a mask every time I go on. I'm here in the office and at Temple. It's just myself and our office manager, but I just can't get used to this whole bizarre reality. So yes, of course, it's going to be virtual. We're doing lots of things. That's how we're doing all of this now, virtually. Otherwise, we would be in the MCTV studios. But yes, January 21st from 4 to 5:30. I hope people will write this down, pay attention, and just take advantage of this remarkable opportunity. It's going to be a great lecture. I've heard him lecture several times.
Yes, David, I should add that your viewers who are interested can go to chesapeakeforum.org on your computer, and then you can see a link to sign up for David Blight's live Zoom lecture, or if you're not available to do that, people can sign up and get a recording of it and play it at their leisure, at their convenience.
And this will be in an honor and in memory of...
This lecture is in memory of John Ford.
Yep.
He was the founding president of Chesapeake Forum, and before that, he was a leader with the Academy for Lifelong Learning, then at the time at the Chesapeake Bay Maritime Museum.
Right. Listen, my memories, as you know, one of the most wonderful experiences we've had in a long time. I've had in a long time. When we taught the Merchant of Venice, all the three of us, that was wonderful, and it was really successful. And you and John were really instrumental in making it a powerful success.
Well, Peter, that course stands out in my mind, and I know in John's mind. We talked about it a few months before his death. We had such an extraordinary group of people. It was you, John Ford, and your congregation and people from Shore Shakespeare were there, actors. We had never taught a group that large, 60 people. And it was one of those great experiences where we felt, I saw John at the height of his game.
Yep.
Just a few months before his death, or before he had a stroke. And I remember specifically talking to him afterwards saying, John, one of the great things about being a teacher, co-teaching with you, is to see a colleague become an expert in his own right. Yeah. And John Ford was in his element. Yep. He'd really loved Shakespeare. And I thought, in fact, I said to him, if I, at some point, when I die, you're going to be able to take over this course and just do beautifully. And alas, I'm the one that's alive, and I'm really pleased that this particular lecture of David Blight will be in John's.
Yeah, me too, and I'll make sure to be there and to tune in and all that. Let's talk a little bit about lifelong learning in the 21st century, and how do you envision Chesapeake Forum's role, not only in the community, but down the road in the coming years? What could we think about as a community? This is becoming an important component and element to the stability and what I think is the real gift of this community. So thoughts and comments and that sort of thing?
Yes. Lifelong learning is, I think, going to become, already is perhaps, extremely important as we seniors live longer and often find that in a life in retirement is not all what was cracked up to be. People who have been deeply engaged in work, perhaps in commerce, in business, and academia, medicine, various fields, and it's often can lead to a certain letdown when you finally withdraw from the place where you had spent many years of your life. And people would occasionally say, when they would sign up for courses, they would use the phrase, you better use it or lose it. Keep your mind active, be curious, and the beauty of lifelong learning, and I think it's open for people of any age, frankly. But since we are living longer and sometimes, fortunately, healthier, this is a wonderful way to keep the mind active and also to engage in real things, or to look at topics which, when we were younger, we didn't have time to do. And I found that, John Ford and I found that these classes provided people with a safe place, a safe haven to speak about thoughts of the time. We taught mostly literature courses, and it was amazing how many students would say, well, when I was in my business career or when I was in college, I never had a chance to read Shakespeare, never really had a chance to look at literature, poetry, and so on. And they would say that they are really ready to learn. They want to be able to do those, to pursue those things. And that's the great beauty, is to see a person who has had a huge life before them, and they can begin to read Shakespeare and say, I get it. This character or this situation reminds me of something that is real. And those were wonderful things, as you know, Peter, being a Shakespearean scholar yourself. I'm
not a scholar, but an aficionado. And I remember one of the students, I can't remember who it was, she said, I wanted to ask this question when I first read this in high school, but I was afraid to. And then she had this whole long discussion, and remember that's what the power of this kind of learning experience is. One quick question and then we'll conclude, or one comment. I made the Hyman boys, Daniel and Ari, read Shakespeare and memorize soliloquies when they were in high school and late junior high school, and they thought I was crazy. They accommodated their father.
Oh, good for you, Peter.
But I had them do Shylock, and I had them do some of Romeo and Juliet, and of course the To Be speech, which I think is just the best, and one or two others. And they thought I was crazy, which they still may do. But once they got to college and they were dealing with literature courses, they said, Dad, I'm really glad you made me do that. I got a whole different perspective on it now. So, yes.
That's wonderful, Peter.
Yeah, one, I will brag a bit. One's a doctor, the other's a lawyer, but they have a good foundation in literature and the humanities and all that sort of stuff. Before we conclude, one last question, John. What other courses are available this semester to the public through Chesapeake Forum? Anything else going on?
Yes, there's quite a large number.
And
they're all via Zoom.
Okay.
And you can your viewers can go to chesapeakeforum.org and just scroll through these classes. But I can just mention a few. I jotted them down.
Please.
There's a course on great maritime literature. There's a course on artificial intelligence, what it is and what its role is in our society.
Cool.
On Hemingway's selected short stories, how newspapers reported on the Civil War, examining newspapers from both North and South and seeing different perspectives. I'm teaching a course with Karen Kaludis called it's on the letters of Abigail and John Adams.
Cool.
There's a course on the many parts of fascism. There's something for everybody, including some courses about the Eastern Shore, about its ecology, its environment. There's a course on birding. There's a lot
Cool.
there for anyone to sign up for.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds, not that I'm surprised, it's a full curriculum, and people, I hope, will take opportunity for what the Chesapeake Forum provides and allows us to do. Thank you for being on the Rabbi's Roundtable, the first guest of 2021. You will come back and we will talk more. Thank you.
I'd love to do that, Peter. Thank you so much.
And we will be back, Easton.
Happy New Year to you.
You too.
The Avalon Foundation and MCTV programming is proudly supported by Chesapeake College. Chesapeake College, your time, your place.
We are MCTV, Midshore Community Television. We want your help in making our station more robust so that we can better serve the residents of Talbot County. So, how can you help? If you are already making video content, submit that content for broadcast to the station. It's free! Are you involved in events, shows, or lectures that would be of interest to the community? We can work with you to figure out the best way to capture those events for airing on MCTV, be it training, equipment rental, or hiring our production staff to film at a reasonable rate. Do you want to produce your own show? Let us help you get started. Come be a part of this valuable community resource. Email the station at nick@avalonfoundation.org or visit us in the basement of the historic Avalon Theater at 40 East Dover Street in downtown Easton.
And we are back, Easton, and welcome to the Rabbi's Roundtable. I'm Rabbi Peter Hyman, and instead of coming to you from the studios of MCTV, actually I'm at Temple B'nai Israel, standing in an empty sanctuary. But I'm really proud and delighted to introduce our next two guests. Both are leaders in the community. Both are not strangers and will be familiar to you. Our first guest is Beth Ann Langrel. She is CEO of For All Seasons, the Behavioral Health and Rape Crisis Center. And I'll talk a little bit more about her qualifications in a moment. And our second guest is Derek White. Derek is the director of the Peach Blossom YMCA, the Easton Y, and a dear friend and somebody who has seen me go up and down in more ways than one. Sorry, I should stop this. I'll behave. Anyway, thank you both for coming. Beth Ann, just to give people a little bit about you. You have served as Chief Executive Officer for All Seasons since 2014. You have a master's degree, an MS in Counseling and Human Services from Syracuse University. Are you from the Northeast?
I am. I grew up outside of Rochester, New York.
Oh, cool. I'm
in the snow.
Yeah. I don't miss the snow at all, actually. And never anyway. And actually, over the past 6 years, she has guided the growth and the success of For All Seasons, bringing it from 24 employees to 90 employees. And Beth Ann was recently appointed to Governor Hogan's Women's Commission of Maryland, and that's a wonderful thing. I also know that you are an excellent singer and a good actress, and you are the proud mother of two wonderful boys, Jordan and Brandon, and we are delighted that you've taken time to be with me on the Rabbi's Roundtable and to discuss what you and Derek are doing with the YMCA, and I think it's really important. So, Dee, do me a favor. Let me ask you to begin with this joint venture. Tell me a little bit about it, how it developed. When I read about it, I thought, wow, this is genius. And I called you guys immediately, and it was only a day or two ago, and I realized it was late. But I thought this was a wonderful connection and a wonderful coming together of two important organizations for the community. So give us a little background.
Sure. So I would say this originated really on the why and For All Seasons, essentially the why trying to figure a way to help Beth Ann and her team with their own physical and mental health as well. I mean, these are our health professionals that are serving our community in so many different ways. And that conversation on how to get their employees plugged in at the Y or whatever avenues they choose, then trickled into how we can serve our staff and our members with not only their physical health, but their mental health as well. And that's something that, as mentioned in the article that you referenced, and Beth Ann and I have gone back and forth with this, is at least for the Y, it's to build a healthy spirit, mind, and body for all. And oftentimes people think of coming and running on the treadmill or swimming laps in the pool or whatever, lifting weights. But we also want our members and our staff to be mentally healthy as well. And so it was a natural fit. And there's a story behind that, and I want to highlight that later about how really For All Seasons was there for us, and it just became natural to figure out how to make that happen.
Then anything you want to add? Any comments?
Yeah, I mean, I so appreciate the opportunity to be here and to highlight the work that Derek and I are doing together. And I think it's certainly, if one thing that has happened through COVID is the understanding that mental health includes wellness, both physical and mental and spiritual. And I think, the idea that came together as we were trying to put a healthy wellness program in place for our staff, because, as Derek said, we are spending a lot of time helping the community. We've seen over 1,100 new patients since March 1st through our doors. And wow. I mean, our staff needs the ability to discharge, and what a better way but to support and put a program in place where we can help support a membership to the YMCA or other gyms around the region for our staff.
That I can't begin to tell you how important the comments you both just made, how important they are. Just one quick aside. I've done a lot of chaplaincy work over the years, and especially some of you know, did a lot of chaplaincy work with the Boy Scouts, Scouts USA now, and went to world jamborees and national jamborees and local events. And in my youth work, it was always apparent to me that, and rightly so, the focus of everybody's concern were our members, the YMCA or those who walk through your door or the kids. And I discovered early on that one of the lacking areas was concern for the staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was one of my focuses. I always wanted to make sure the staff was taken care of, because they were putting out all this energy to make sure the patrons were being taken care of. That's what caught my attention. I think it's wonderful what you're doing. It's really important. Is there a history between both organizations, or is this really the first time?
I'll chime in there, and I know that there's been some work in the past in regards to how to support each other's staff teams, but really this, to highlight what you just said, anyone familiar with Talbot County remembers the tragedy that our YMCA went through a little over a year ago. And For All Seasons and you, Rabbi, were there for our staff team and many of our members during that time of crisis. And that really was the catalyst for, we've always said, to your point, that we care for our staff, but that was really the catalyst for change for me in understanding the mental well-being for my own personal staff here. And I think that, at least on my end, and Beth Ann may agree because she sees this regularly, there's a stigma, or has been for a long time, around mental health. And that what we want to do, at least for our team here, and when I say team, I mean our staff and our members, is take down any barrier there is to people feeling uncomfortable in asking for that help or that resource. And so to have that connection with somebody in an organization that was here for us in so many ways and continues to be, like For All Seasons, to take that barrier away to where a member is walking out and says, you know what, I think I am going to just stop and ask about that resource. I think is just another positive move for our community. And that's my thoughts on it in regards to the relationship that we have. And I'm just so thankful for Beth Ann and Lisa Lee and the leadership that we have there, and Danae and all that team just being willing to serve our people.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I certainly think, one of the things that Derek just talked about was the stigma. And, I always say when I speak to our community that if somebody has a heart issue, they go see a cardiologist. If someone has diabetes, they seek insulin. And, our brain is our largest organ in our body, and it needs just as much attention as the heart or, the bloodstream with insulin and your pancreas. Those are all things that are a no-brainer when someone needs services. And we've really done a great amount of outreach in this past year. And, our team continues to respond to trauma in the community. And that was where we were able to provide services and folks and support for the YMCA team over a year ago and continue to provide those services. And Rabbi, you were a part of our Be a Light campaign that we did in the fall. And it was wonderful to be able to bring so many folks together. And Sam, who works at the YMCA, was a part of our Be a Light video, just to let people know that it's okay not to be okay. And if there's one thing we've learned through COVID is that the trajectory of everybody's mental health has shifted. Even if somebody were to say, my mental health is in a pristine condition, I don't think any of us, the three of us included on this interview right now, could say that we haven't been affected some way or felt something different over this last year.
Of course.
And so I think this is just an example of where we're recognizing that when we are reaching out to our community, when we're reaching out to the members at the Y, when we're talking about our staff or our clients or folks across the shore, how we all work together in programs that we put in place to help destigmatize the needs of our folks for mental health is really, really important.
That's a nail I think you hit on the head. And I think personally, doing what I do, doing counseling, from a pastoral perspective, how do you destigmatize and make it okay? As you said, somebody has a stomach ache, you go to the doctor, you break your toe or you break your hand, but the stigma dealing with mental health, and your spots on television are really wonderful. Thank you.
I think one of the things that we do, Rabbi, is we talk about it.
Yes.
I've shared recently my own personal story that I grew up with a grandmother who suffered from a severe mental illness. And when I was growing up, nobody talked about it. It was just that you knew that grandma wasn't doing great. That was all we ever knew.
Right.
And so now I think the more that we talk about it, the more that we engage in these conversations, and the more that we reassure people that it's okay, that you're not crazy if you need to talk to someone, you simply need assistance. I always think about the brain no different than you look at the legal scale. So someone who has depression, their brain is just a little bit off balance. And so if we can get them in counseling and get them back to their best self, it balances that brain out.
Okay, yeah.
And sometimes people need psychiatric services to go along with that. Sometimes people just need a place to go and talk and focus in on them. But the more conversations we have, the more that we can understand that no different than Me Too allowed women who had been exposed and had been suffering through silence with sexual harassment and sexual assault. It's the same thing for mental illness and mental wellness. There's a lot of people that are saying, oh, your family too, or oh, you too. And so it's that conversation that starts to create a platform of, if we all talked about our mental wellness and our families and our mental illness and our families, as much as we talked about the football scores on Sunday, it would be a much different trajectory that we could be living in.
Well, there's no question, and I see it again in my pastoral work. And I have always been a big believer in, since the tragedy happened. And I remember that morning like it was yesterday, actually. Had we had a society that was more responsive to mental health issues. I think that that could have been avoided or averted in many ways, but that's just my own. We don't have to get into that, but
yeah. I mean, I think there's always going to be the 2020 look back of what we could have done differently. But I think one of the things about the beauty of our community, and I think, you know, our relationship with the YMCA and our relationship with you, Rabbi, and the synagogue and all that you have done to bring our community together, just as important as what's being done pre-tragedy is how we respond post-tragedy. And I think that's where we very naturally took an opportunity to support one another as a community and be able to help people understand that there are services available when trauma and tragedy happens in the community.
Absolutely, absolutely. Dee, do you see this reaching out just farther than just the two communities, you know, For All Seasons and the Y? You see any or experienced any feedback or any results in the general community?
Absolutely. I mean, the newsletter went out just a couple days ago to Y members, and I've already just heard a plethora of positive comments. You know, one person saying mental health has been hiding for too long, or we've hidden mental health for too long. I'm so glad that you guys have taken on this relationship. And so, but I think that, you know, I oftentimes, like Rabbi referenced the YMCA as the front porch of the community, and we don't ever turn anyone away from our programs or services. So you don't have to be a member to come to the Y. You can just participate in swim lessons or basketball, and you never know when that time is going to happen where somebody needs a resource for their mental health. And so I think, yes, to answer your question, this is just going to be a launching point for us to continue to make mental health resources available to a larger population of people, and to just, to Beth Ann's point, talk about it and to see, oh, wait a second, I have a story. You know, one of our staff who went through the tragedy here went through some training recently. Went through some counseling himself, and I won't share the information specifically, but you know, the story in this is that this staff person, although that situation was extremely hard on him, coincidentally had a connecting point with a young child under the age of 12 who also was going through some mental health challenges. And his mom knew that our staff person was going to see the team over at For All Seasons. And in that conversation said, you know, X person that works at the YMCA goes to For All Seasons as well. And the boy just brightened up. It was like, wait a second, this is somebody that I know that is experiencing something similar to me. And it normalizes it. I mean, it makes my hair stand up to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I don't know why we went through the situation that we did, but I do believe that there's some intentionality there, that this individual that works at the Y experienced that sad tragedy to be put in the position to help a young child feel more confident about addressing mental health themselves. Like, I truly believe that was why that happened. So
that's amazingly powerful.
And Derek, I love the analogy that you just said, that, you know, the YMCA, that Robbie made the comment that the YMCA is the front porch of the community. And as soon as you said that, what I'm thinking is mental health has been the back porch, because it's been the stuff we haven't talked about. And what an awesome opportunity for us to join you on the front porch, where that story that you just shared really talks about, hey, it's okay because so-and-so has been receiving services. And so now we can, you know, we're going to grab a rocker and we're going to come next to you on that front porch and help people understand that it's okay.
That's awesome. It's a big porch, lots of space.
It's a real big porch. As you know, I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan of both institutions. Mm-hmm. I really appreciate you guys coming on the Rabbis Roundtable and sharing these thoughts and talking about the collaboration that you're going through. We will do this again. I will have you both back on, and we'll talk about how it's going, what you're seeing. Mm-hmm. To Derek White, the CEO of the Peach Blossom YMCA, director of the place that I should be working out in that's a different issue, and to Beth Ann Langrel, who is the CEO of For All Seasons Behavioral Health and Rape Crisis Center. Thank you very much for being on the Rabbis Roundtable. This is important information to address. It's important for the community. And as I said, you guys will come back and we'll continue the discussion and see how things are progressing.
Great. And thank you so much, Rabbi, for bringing attention to what we think is going to be a really great partnership moving forward.
Oh, I'm excited to see how it goes. And if I can help in any way, just keep me posted.
I'll save a treadmill for you.
Thank you. Good. That's fine. You have been seated at the Rabbis Roundtable. This is our first Rabbis Roundtable in 2021. To all our guests, John Miller and Beth Ann Langro and Derek White, I say thank you. Happy, healthy New Year, and we will see you next time, Easton, on the Rabbis Roundtable.